Alrighty there. Welcome back, everyone, to
The Chiss Ascendancy.
episode 36.
The big 3-6.
Today,
3 times 2, 6. 3, 6.
Would you care for more mimosa? Today, we're finally getting to review and dive into Thrawn Ascendancy, book 1 of the Ascendancy trilogy.
Yeah.
So technically, the name of this book is Chaos Rising, but I keep calling it Thrawn Ascendancy. It's book 1 of the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy. So
Right.
today we're reviewing and kind of diving into Chaos Rising, what we liked from it. You know, we don't have to go page by page storyline, but what we liked, what we got most out of it, and where's it taking us.
Yep.
And so that's kind of today's...
Yeah, Tim does some good stuff in this book.
Yeah, I feel like he was unleashed. Not to make a Star Wars pun, but
Right.
I feel like he finally was able to open his, when he did the Heir to the Empire trilogy, he was able to just run as wild as he wanted to do.
Blank slate.
For instance, beginning of the book, there's a concept here, which obviously has been retconned, but it's a very cool concept, where Luke Skywalker is on the balcony of the Imperial Palace that's been renamed to whatever Senate building or whatever on Coruscant, and he's drinking hot chocolate. And he says that Lando showed it to him. It's an exotic drink. And Timothy's on. A lot of people gave him flack, like, hot chocolate's an Earth drink. And he was like, oh, and falcons aren't Earth birds? So he talks about having hot chocolate, and he has a really cool concept. He talks about Luke Skywalker talking to his friend Ben Kenobi, and it's the last time that Ben Kenobi can talk to him because it's Ben's turn to rest in the Force.
Yeah.
And obviously that's before the living Force and the cosmic Force were kind of a thing, and George really expounded on how the Force works. That's not how the Force works. But very cool concept there. And that's what I love about the Heir to the Empire trilogy, and I don't think it'll ever really be topped as far as a trilogy of books, including Thrawn.
Yeah.
Because of the freedom of what that looks like. So this book feels like a return to Legends form with some freedom out there. So we'll get to that. We do have a little bit of news. So obviously we record on Friday, so September 25th is today's date. This will come out on the 28th. And today is two awesome people's birthday on the 25th. The first one, the greatest Jedi of all time, Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill's birthday. He's getting up there in age. He's not quite 70. I'll let you guess.
He's no longer 68.
I'll let you guess how old he is. Gaily. And then, secondly, my wife, Macy. It's her birthday today. She's 26.
Macy.
So happy birthday, babe. Hope you have a great day. And hopefully by the time this comes out, we will have eaten some amazing steak later on Friday night. And so, really cool. We've been married it'll be 5 years this March. So she's awesome, and she's very supportive of the channel, so I really appreciate her. And then, actually, today while we're filming, I've got my phone right here, because what they're calling HasCon is going on right now. Hasbro Convention, it's online because they couldn't do any of the San Diego Comic-Con reveals.
Right.
They're doing reveals for Star Wars, G.I. Joe, all that kind of stuff, but they're just doing it virtually on YouTube.
Some of them are hits. Some of them are miss.
Yeah, a couple of weird things. Holiday Troopers, Christmas edition of 5 Black Series Troopers, and they're all like red and green with like candy cane swords, and they all get either a porg or like a little... One of the cool ones... Crap. I'm a sucker for buying a whole figure for an accessory, but a little Christmas red and green Babu Frick... I need it.
I would want one of those just for the sake of being able to sneak onto the Christmas tree and Mom not doing anything about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's so small.
Yeah.
They also come with like little porgs, or like the Christmas Range Trooper is, because they have the poofier outfit, the Range Troopers from Solo, they have him painted as Santa Claus. And so they have a little Dio, the little toy, or the little droid that's from The Rise of Skywalker, and he's painted brown with a red nose, and they added little antlers to him.
That's funny.
A couple of other major reveals. The Vintage Collection is getting a couple of re-releases of some prequel favorites: Anakin Skywalker, Queen Amidala, battle droid. That's the one that's most important to me, so I can get multiples of those. And then the Black Series, which is the 6-inch figure. Return of the Jedi scheme Boba Fett, because every time they release it, it's a Empire Strikes Back. Mm-hmm. And most people that I know, their favorite color scheme, their preferred color scheme that Boba has is from Return of the Jedi. That's when he starts having more of the orangey yellow, and the helmet is better in my opinion. And he comes with a very cool. He comes with a regular EE3 Blastech blaster rifle, and then he comes with another one that the gun is cut in half, like when Luke, attacks him on the skiff. Very cool.
What does Luke do?
He attacks him on the skiff. And then besides that, he's swinging a sword from right to left. What do you mean to do? And then you also have, we've been waiting for it. We've been asking for it.
He's not saying we as in we. It's him and
me and
his friends.
Tons of Star Wars fans across the universe. We're finally getting a 6-inch Black Series Jar Jar Binks.
Wow.
Make some noise. I'm so excited. It's going to be a deluxe figure, and so as instead of just getting the Jar Jar, he comes with the Gungan shield and
cool.
And a spear and like a Miso no Hababuba, one of those throwers. Very cool. I'm very excited for Jar Jar. And then they're doing an archive line. So an archive line, for those of you who don't collect Star Wars figures, is toys that have been released before that have now become rare, and they're reintroducing them. So for instance, Anakin Skywalker or Yoda or a Scout Trooper or Boba Fett, Bosk, IG-88, some of those that came out early in the Black Series run before a ton of fans were buying figures again, that had become very expensive. So archive for this wave, I think Luke and Leia are some. I like those, but the ones that I care about, they're re-releasing Commander Cody, which is very, very cool. And most importantly, they're re-releasing Grand Admiral Thrawn in the Black Series 6-inch with a new face painting.
Is this version going to have the Islamari slung around his neck?
No. I know.
Big sad.
It's a tragedy, that's what it is. What I need to do is I need to find someone who knows how to do 3D printing, and I mail them an Islamiri in the 3 3/4 inch scale, and then they scan it and then blow it up to 6-inch scale and mail it back to me. And then what they could do is they do that one for free, and then because they have the details, they'll be able to sell other ones. Make sense? So that's what I'm going for. I think that's all the main reveals. They did other stuff, but those were the main ones. Black Series, Phase 1 Clone Trooper. I could break them all down, but there's more than we want to talk about.
Other cool stuff that was released this particular week was some concept art regarding the High Republic series.
Yeah.
We got a cool concept of a lightsaber hilt.
Let me look. I can't remember the guy's name. I'm going to look it up.
What it kind of reminds me of is there's a deep sea worm that lives in different types of coral and acts as a defender for the coral for different fish that'll feed off of it, but it's got like this big hinged jaw like that. And there's a bit on the lightsaber that's like that, and it kind of opens up when the crossguard opens up. I'm almost positive they pulled that idea from nature, but it's a very cool concept art. There's a unique type belt attachment for the lightsaber to attach to.
Stellan, either Gios or Gios. It's spelled Gios.
How could we forget?
How could we know? How could we forget? So it's cool because it's a. If you go to our Instagram, you'll see the post about it. But it's very cool. It's a crossguard lightsaber, similar to what Kylo Ren has. But the crossguard, instead of just having the vents coming out, it's strange because the handle itself, it's made to look more like a sword. Basically, is my thought. It looks more like an actual medieval knight's sword. So, like you said, it looks like the jaws of like one of those crazy underwater wormfish eel things. And so you have the handle, that's a regular lightsaber handle, and then you have the hooks on the side. And then when you activate the saber, what would be cool, I don't know if we'll probably never get, maybe if we get a comic it would show it, but it'll, I wonder if the blade pushing out will be what releases those, you see what I'm saying? If they're just like this, and then the blade comes out, and that's what shoots them out. Yep. That'll be super cool. I do love that they're running with the, knight concept, the medieval kind of look. So that's very cool. And then, of course, on the video game side of things, October 2nd, Star Wars Squadrons comes out. It looks amazing.
It looks pretty sick. If you haven't watched the promo video, do yourself a favor. Even if you're not like a big piloting game fan, like I'm really not, that's like not my favorite part of gaming. But the promo looks very cool. It looks like they're setting up a very cool story sequence.
And again, with the dadgum, in my mind, it's like if you're not a Wookiee or a human or a Mon Calamari, you're not allowed to be a good guy. So it keeps throwing me for a loop seeing the Trandoshans and the Quarrens and some of those species that I just assume are bad. But then again, you have the Trandoshan freaking Jedi from the High Republic coming out.
Yep.
So
looks like they're trying to do a after the fact, all species can be good species type idea.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
What we really know is that they can't be.
We know what it is.
They're going to backstab eventually.
They're probably going to stab you on the back. That's what I was about to say. Good job.
Backstabbers.
Betrayers. Okay, well, we've been waiting for such a momentous occasion, and so today we're going to dive into Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising. Samuel, real quick, why don't we jump into just your overall thoughts on the book? What did you think about it? How'd you like it? Scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate it?
Scale of 1 to 10. So,
12!
I think as far as what's canon material right now,
right,
the novel Thrawn, which is the first bit in the second most recent trilogy. There was Thrawn and then Alliances and then Treason. I think Thrawn so far has been my favorite standalone novel.
Right.
This one was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
One, it was formatted uniquely.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having chapters 1 through whatever. Tim Zahn aired on the side of having a chapter sequence, which was what was the present timeline, and then there was a memories sequence, which was a flashback timeline. So
right.
It went from like chapter 1 to memories 1, or it'll be like chapter 3 memories 2, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a cool way of keeping track of everything.
Sometimes you would get 2 chapters in a row.
Yeah, and then
I don't think you ever got 2 memory sections in a row. But
yeah, so I thought I'd never read a book that distinguished the timelines by titling them differently.
Yeah, I've read books before, like for instance, the book Last Shot by Daniel Jose Older. Great book, by the way. It had past and present, but it would say stuff like 25 years ago, present day, or this year, then this year, or then and now. But it was cool because instead of just the way that this one was laid out was very like chapter memories. I like that a lot because he did a good job of, we all know that this is in the past, but it's current for, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting concept. But yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Well, and even between some of the other novels that he's written about Thrawn. So for instance, Thrawn Alliances. It has the time when he's working with Vader and it has the time when he's working with Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really no distinguishing between those timelines as far as, the announcement of the chapter title. So it was interesting just to even see growing from that point, writing about Thrawn to this point, what the differences were. That being said, this was probably a more challenging read for me just because whenever I read a Star Wars novel, I'm very familiar with the structure of things going on or the characters or even just like the species types and, the general behavior of what's going on. But
you come in kind of knowing
there's
where we
certain
stand
things that I
things.
can just assume, that I know. And so this was a whole new structure of thinking, a whole new structure of behavior, of expectations.
Yeah.
And Tim does some cool stuff picking up on things that he had like hinted at interacting with the Chiss culture previously and kind of explaining that further, like how the Chiss name is structured, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have your we always knew that there was a core name because that's how, hey, my name is Mithron Ururido, but call me Thrawn. But now we know why. So you have the myth. So in Mithron Urido, or however I don't know. It's interesting because we're both Audible guys, So when you first meet Thrawn in the Heir to the Empire trilogy, it's just Thrawn the whole time. Thrawn. And then there's a book called Outbound Flight, which was obviously by Timothy Zahn. But it kind of covers the Outbound Flight project, and it talks about this is very similar to Thrawn Alliances, where this is when Anakin and Obi-Wan were very close to meeting Grand Admiral Thrawn, but didn't happen quite, stuff like that. There's some overlap there with concepts from that and Alliances. But in that book is when he basically says to the person that he meets, yeah, my name is, imagine you're speaking to someone that doesn't speak English, and they say, yeah, my name is, and then they say it, very quickly. It's a long name and it's in their native tongue, but you can call me Thrawn. That's kind of how I picture it. And so, but that was the first time that I can remember reading and going, oh crap, it's like this long whatever. But I didn't know what the breakdown was. I just knew that Thrawn was the easiest part of the name to say, so that's why he said it. But it turns out that's part of Chiss culture, is the closer you get to someone, they have a core name that you can call them.
Well, and even stuff like why Aralani only has like a 2-part name. We get into that as well. So just some really cool, little tidbits like that. But you're also learning a new intimate style of structure between, powerful families or Navy or, just regular government. So it was kind of a lot to keep up with until you get to like the back third, the pieces start to fall in place. It was like a M. Night Shyamalan movie in that sense that, there was a lot of stuff just in the air and you're trying to keep track of it, juggling it. And then you're like, how is that all going to work out?
Yeah, I actually called you about halfway through and I was like, I'm struggling a little bit. I was like, I don't understand why this is going on. I don't understand who's the antagonist. What am I doing? And Thrawn is an interesting character because he's compelling, but he's not relatable. You know what I mean? Like, he is relatable, but like he's not relatable the way that if you're reading a Han Solo book, Han's very relatable. Luke Skywalker is very relatable. Thrawn is, you're rooting for him. He's the protagonist. You want him to succeed.
This book's kind of like, have you ever watched the movie, what's that movie Dad took us to watch like 18 times in theaters with Benedict Cumberbatch? Code something?
Oh, The Imitation Game.
The Imitation Game. That's what this is kind of like. You've got a brilliant main character, and you have almost nothing in common with that person, but you're really pulling for him.
You're pulling for him, and at the same time, you do feel alienated from him, like everyone else in the story does. And so it's very interesting, but just like you said, the second half and especially the last third of the book really pulls everything together, and it makes sense. So out of 10, what do you give it?
I give it an 8.
Okay.
Yeah. I think if I read it more, I would begin to appreciate it more. There were just certain things like, I'm so used to a flawless Thrawn, it's so weird to see him kind of fall into pitfalls, that he's a little bit more accident prone than he would have been. I mean, he's still a brilliant character, right? But you see him from the get.
Okay, I guess I'll put it to you this way. I feel like people who are listening to this podcast either aren't going to read the book or they've read the book by now. So I say full send on spoilers.
Okay, well,
what are things that happen in the book
if you plan to read the book and you haven't yet, I'm sorry. Here we go.
Full send.
Full send. So we're kind of past the overview review point.
Right.
This is the point of no return. So
here we go. Go for it.
There's a point where, and it's something that it's his blunder, his major blunder, that is kind of what I assume is kind of his catalyst of being kind of pushed out to begin with. He makes a political error, and really, to my understanding, it's not even his fault. You know what I mean? He's just trying to make the best of a crappy situation. But it's just so weird seeing him basically be manipulated by anybody who's not Tarkin. You know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of disappointing for me.
I'll be completely honest. Okay, so what happens is there's 2 alien species, right, that aren't Chiss. And they're like, help us, how do we do such and such? we're being attacked. And Thrawn, this is, 7/8 of the way through the book.
But they don't tell you what this is.
Right.
It's just one of those things you're like, oh my God, please just let me get to the end so I can figure out,
right.
what he's done wrong.
So you gotta remember, you're, 90% of the way through the book, but this is also a memories chapter.
Yeah, I think
so you're in the past, but you're almost
chapters.
done. Yeah,
and this is memories 10.
Yeah. So you're in the past, but you're towards the end of the book.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Honestly, I'll be completely honest. I was underwhelmed by.
It seems really insignificant.
I was like, he had to have done something really terrible.
Right.
So basically what it does is him and Admiral Aralani are visiting a neighboring planet, and they're trying to, they want to create a relationship with these people so that they can have trade with them.
Yeah.
The Chiss are, the beginning of the book says the enemies of the Chiss, basically don't exist, as like they get destroyed, and the friends of the Chiss flourish.
It's interesting because the Chiss are like this.
I'm butchering that quote. Keep going.
The Chiss are like this military superpower.
Right.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, they're incredibly reluctant to engage in any military conquest.
Their big thing is they're
they
against
do not
preemptive strikes. And that's always been the thing.
Yeah, and so you got to...
Sorry. All right, here we go. Here's what it says. For thousands of years, it has been an island of calm within the chaos. So very cool from the beginning. What we know as the unknown regions, they call the chaos. So that's pretty cool. It says, it is the center of power, a model of stability, and a beacon of integrity. The 9 ruling families guard it from within. The expansionary defense fleet guards it from without. Its neighbors are left in peace. Its enemies are left in ruin. It is light and culture and glory. It is the Chiss Ascendancy. So they're trying to expand and really work with their neighboring, I almost said countries, neighboring planets and species, and one feigns an attack, being attacked. So imagine something like Pearl Harbor is happening, but it's not really happening. Yeah. We're feigning it. Hey, Thrawn, help us, we're being attacked by the Japanese. And he said, well, here's how you defeat the Japanese, yada, 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 and just rattles off. It turns out that we weren't being attacked. And now we're going to use it against them.
Yeah, and they use that information basically. Thrawn inadvertently helped another species
be conquered.
They were not, in that point of a relationship with, overtake. And in so doing, Thrawn essentially was responsible for the fall of that second species.
Right.
Which is a big no-no, apparently. I get where it would be significant, but in the grand scheme of things, it seems very insignificant.
Maybe I just have such an American and aggressive personality,
I get it from the Chiss point of view, but at the same time, I'm like, and then what happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was waiting for something bigger. I thought something tragic would happen that would endanger Scylla, which is the home world of the Chiss.
Right.
And that it was really, in my mind, it was underwhelming because it was not significant against the Chiss or endangering to Thrawn. It was just
it was just a political faux pas.
You messed up and you stepped out of the normal realm of things, and that's why you're in trouble.
Yeah. I guess, I think it's... every great character has to have a significant weakness.
Right.
Everybody knows what Thrawn's is. It's political. He's politically just not there.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of...
To put it very kindly, he is not there.
Yeah, to relate him to a real-life character, much less brash, but he reminds me of George Patton. If you ever watched the movie Patton...
Militarily brilliant.
Amazing military mind.
He does not give two poops about any... But the thing about Patton is that...
I think he knew how to play the game, but he just didn't give a crap.
Didn't care enough to play by the rules. Thrawn is just... He's oblivious, and also I think if he did understand, he wouldn't care. But he doesn't have even the grace to know enough.
Right.
So it was cool to see people within the Chiss Ascendancy kind of helping Thrawn get along in that way, where Tarkin in the Empire is... working, he's always serving the Emperor's interests.
Right.
The Emperor wants Thrawn to thrive because he knows he's a great asset. And so he has kind of Tarkin paving the way for him.
Man, it does make me... I don't want to stray too far from the book because we can talk about that kind of stuff later. But it does make me think of, basically, you have later on in his career, you have something similar where the Emperor wants ultimate power, right? That's how Palpatine works. He's running both sides of a war, and then wins the war against himself,
Very
and then
much
is
the
in
old
charge
man
of
playing chess at the beginning of A Bug's Life.
Yeah. And so he wants ultimate power, and he sees ultimate power as the ability to squash anyone in a matter of seconds, and so he's a fan of the Death Star. Thrawn's not a fan of the Death Star. Thrawn shouldn't even know about the Death Star, but he's so freaking smart that he figures it out. This is in Thrawn Treason.
And yet, so politically inept that he has
He
the
doesn't
poor
know how to...
grace to say that he knows about it.
Right. Instead of undoing it
Yeah.
or making the project fail from the inside.
Yeah.
And I think Tarkin knows it's not a great idea, and he trusts Thrawn, but
But at the end of the day, and I think this is one of the coolest things about Tarkin, is that even though he is so capable, he's always going to serve the interests of the Emperor.
right. But I think Tarkin is less militarily strong than Thrawn.
He's politically brilliant.
But he's
though.
politically brilliant.
Yeah.
So if on a scale of 10, you got a 10 and a 0 on Thrawn's side, military to politically, and then you have an 8 and an 8, military and politically, in Tarkin. That's what makes him such a crazy figure, is because he's nearly as smart militarily, but politically he's,
it's
a billion times stronger.
Thrawn is almost, and I mean this in like the strictest sense, not being derogatory, he is like autistically brilliant militarily, and it injures him in social ways. But it's just like, there was a kid that was in your class growing up, and you could be like, hey, December 27th, 2025, what day is that? And he'd be like, Friday. He would just know.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of brilliance that people like that operate in that Thrawn has when it comes to the military. But
in the same way,
hurts him in political and social ways.
Well, you see, in human beings, you have people who are savants who can play, whatever symphony at the age of 4 on the piano,
Right.
but they can't, but they can't read, or but that they're socially awkward or things like that, and Thrawn seems to be very much personally great communicator, he can, his artistic eye is amazing, his military eye is amazing, his ability to read an entire culture's way of doing things is unmatched, but it's just he doesn't understand how things work when you're not being your normal self. So he can look at the art of a species, and this is their truest form of expression. Therefore, I know this species does this and this and this.
Yeah.
And it's the backstabbingness of Washington, D.C. that he doesn't understand. He doesn't get the, hang on, so we're on sides, but we're not on the same side?
Right.
He doesn't understand that.
He's so forthcoming in his own right because he feels he has nothing to fear.
Yeah.
That he doesn't understand maneuvering.
So basically, the book takes you from Thrawn being adopted, and he's born into a certain family, but in the Chiss, there's actually different rankings within families. So there are 9 ruling families of the Chiss. That doesn't mean there's only 9 families, but there are 9 families that basically are in charge of everything.
So his family's so obscure, the person who was recruiting for the myth hadn't even heard of it.
Right.
And there's the 9 ruling families. You get to know some of them on certain levels. The myth is probably the most powerful at this point in the Chiss Ascendancy, and that's the family that Thrawn gets pulled into.
Right. Well, the myth are very strong, and if Thrawn's career goes where everybody thinks it can go, they kind of have a monopoly on what they can do.
And so there are 3 different rankings of somebody who's not a blood relative that can be in a myth ruling family. The first one is a merit adoptive, so they're kind of pulled in there. There's one called trial born, which is kind of like if you've made it to this point, you're in. If you're a merit adoptive, you can easily be gotten rid of.
Right.
Merit.
It's similar to me. I started, especially because of the term trial born, it made me think of the Jedi Order, where if you're a Padawan and you just can't cut the mustard, then you'll have a beautiful life somewhere else, but you're just not needed in the Order.
And then
once you pass the trials, you're a Jedi Knight.
Right. You're like a full-fledged member of the family. And then there's ranking distant, which is like you've made it all the way. You're probably more affluent than some of the blood-born members.
Right.
You're ranking, you're distantly related, but you're in the tops of the family now.
Right. It's kind of, ranking distant is the most accomplished you can be within the family without
having
being
been born into it.
You have blood-born, which is You're just born into the family name.
Right. You don't have to
And
do
then
trials or anything like that.
There's also cousin, which I don't understand. Does that just mean cousin?
I guess it just means cousin. I mean,
They don't ever talk about that one.
Yeah, they don't.
But basically, bloodborn is you're born into the myth family. You're part of the myth family.
Maybe cousin is if you're born into a family and you like become a merit adoptive of another family.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. But then you have merit adoptive, which is like the lowest rank. We'll recruit you and we'll see what you do. Basically, are you going to benefit and strengthen the family within the realm of politics? Not just politics, but the political side of the families. And then you can choose at any point of your merit adoptive life to shoot yourself ahead to trial born. And if you pass the trials, then you become a ranking distant.
Right.
So it's a very interesting concept.
Well, ranking distant is further down the line. So we
you become a trial born once you pass the trials. Right.
And then, if you prove yourself even further, I think in just your accomplishments for the family.
Right. Just before the title page, a long time ago, Beyond a Galaxy Far, Far Away, we talked about that a little bit.
Very cool.
Only book that ever has had that, ever.
I think as far as the aesthetics of the book, 10 out of 10.
Oh, for sure.
Very cool book.
Yeah, I agree.
As a tangible object.
And again, the Thrawn book itself that had the half picture of Thrawn's face was fantastic. Alliances was very cool. Treason was very cool. The covers of the new Thrawn stuff has been fantastic. Of course, Heir to the Empire is a very cool cover. I wish that on Heir to the Empire that Thrawn had a bigger piece.
Right.
Jeruis Sabaoth is like the main center guy. What a turd, that guy.
Yeah. Mega tool.
So basically, the story in this book, if we just went chronologically, is the story of, I can't remember his name. When the I don't want to get into that. I guess that's a little bit. I'll tell you everything else, but I'll make you read the book to know he has a different name at the beginning of the book, and now you're Thrawn.
Yeah.
And there's like different names that you're given.
So the core name is the last letter of your family, or the last little section of your family, and then your name, which is like a personal thing. And I think the final piece of your name has to do with, and I'm just suspecting this based on how things have moved, because this part never got talked about, but I think it has to do with your status as an individual, with something that you've accomplished.
So if his name is Myth Thrawn Urido,
right?
Do you think that we'll find out what that third part of the name means later in the books?
Because it's not his name, I don't think, at the end of the book.
Right. Well, it's interesting because you have...
or at least in the memory section.
Right.
In the whole, main storyline, he's already met Thrawn Urido.
Right. And so there are a species that are an invasive species that are basically taking over everything in the chaos minus the Chiss, with promises of peace and prosperity, but really everyone's being enslaved.
It's kind of like ruled by blackmail, almost.
Yeah. So you have General Yiv the Benevolent, and they call him the Benevolent because he makes all these grandiose promises about what they're going to give you, what you can benefit from being a part of the Nicardoon Empire.
Right. And I think Thrawn nails it when he says, even in his name, he tries to have it both ways. General Yiv the Benevolent. He wants to have the idea of military conquest.
And the niceness of the benevolent.
The kindness of a benevolent ruler. And I think Thrawn says something along the lines, in trying to be both, he's neither.
So the point of the book, and we don't have to break down how everything happens, but the idea is that Thrawn is struggling politically because there are other families that it's crazy, right? Because the other families either want him to join them instead because they know how powerful he can be for the family, or if he won't join us, there's a character within the Myth family that doesn't care for Thrawn. And there's a character from another one of the 9 ruling families that's trying to recruit Thrawn, but he's not really a fan, but the family really wants him. And those two yahoos, those jackwagons, they decide, if he won't join our family and you don't want him to ruin your family, then together we'll put together a scheme to get him kicked out altogether.
And here's the thing, is that me being the kind of person that I am, even when I'm just reading books, I can see the goodness of their overall intention like those two people who are the most annoying people to me in the book are still trying to protect the Chiss overall.
They're trying,
They
right.
see Thrawn as a threat.
So here's the thing.
Not to them personally. I mean, to them personally, but more so to the Chiss as a whole.
Here's how it is. It's high risk,
But like super high reward.
So basically, when you're hiring someone, or if you want if you are scouting for a professional sports team or whatever, whether it's business or sports or even I'm a pastor, you help at the Bible school that I'm a director of, even bringing in new students. The goal that I've always heard, and something that you're looking for, is someone that can make a great impact, but they're not going to be a pain in the butt. So high ceiling, low maintenance. That's the idea. Now here's the thing. Thrawn is mega high ceiling, semi-high maintenance. He himself is not high maintenance, but the
his
maintenance
personal needs
around
are very
him.
low. Yeah.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't need your help. But it's kind of like
having a you get a feral cat. Like they'll keep the mice away, but don't let them inside the house.
Yeah.
They'll fend for themselves.
That's the thing. Is like, you have an amazing dog, but if they're chewing on everything, what's the deal here? Do you want the dog enough, or do you want to get rid of what do you prefer, your couch or your dog?
Yeah.
And so I guess one detail that I'll get into is there's a point in which Thrawn, this is very typical of Zahn's writing, is that Thrawn needs to do something that he's not supposed to do, but if he can get away with it long enough, it'll pan out,
right.
And the result of that, everyone will go, oh, okay, well, that's a good job.
Yeah.
It's the Mark Sable maneuver. It's we're going to put this whole Star Destroyer out here, and if they blow it up, we're screwed. But if they get close enough to inspect, we'll send out our ties from the belly side of things, and we'll be victorious. There's a ton of risk, but if you stay with me, I promise you it's worth it. And so Thrawn's pulling one of those maneuvers.
Thrawn is the master of, now hear me out.
Yeah, that's him. That's him. Take a risk.
Every single proposition.
So Thrawn is basically, in that respect, we're the same, except for mine is just, it's going to be funny. His is, it'll make us better as a species. So I think he's probably higher ceiling, but I'm a higher floor kind of guy.
Yeah, I had a time when I was in college, and there's it was a big kind of camp setting, and so every night we had a competition to see which group of people. There's 5 groups. There's a lot of people here,
right?
So there's 70 people in each group, to see which group could have the funniest skit that night at the end of the day. And our team sucked. We lost every.
Thought it was going to be good, but it sucked.
And so we had every single week or every night we had lost so far. And I was like, I really didn't want to do this, but I'll do it. So I went to the guy who was in charge of our thing, and I was like, I think I've got us something that can get us the dubs tonight. And so it was a Joel Osteen impression. And we went to the guys that were emceeing the event, and we were like, hey, do you think this is over the line? He's like, if you have to ask. And I was like, it'll be fine. And so I went ahead with it anyway.
High risk, high reward.
Killed it, but it was kind of it's either going to be great or it's going to be terrible.
Right. Yeah. It's the...
By the way, speaking of Joel Osteen, if you want to have a good laugh, go to inspirationcube.com and just enjoy.
Well, dadgummit. Anyways, so... Where do I go from that? So part of the scheme is that he needs somebody to buy time. That's in the book. And so the guy that's the part of one of the myths that's we need to get Thrawn the crap out of here. He's too much maintenance, and it's not worth the reward if it's constant Tums on my side of things,
right.
Constant Alka-Seltzer putting down my heartburn because of this guy.
That guy in Dumb and Dumber, he's like, oh, my ulcer.
Yeah. He's basically...
Super worried.
He's the kid. He's Dennis the Menace. He's constantly making a mess, but he's a sweet kid.
I was thinking more along the lines of Kevin from Home Alone.
He's Kevin McAllister. It's same thing.
He's got a high threshold for destruction, but he can put it in the right direction.
Exactly. Yeah, he's high risk, high reward. And so basically, here's the other thing though. The 9 ruling families never see anybody as a threat because they're so confident in their military might that it's we're not even going to worry about anybody. And if somebody attacks us, then we'll just destroy and make them wish they were never born. Which is an awesome strategy, except for Thrawn realizes that the Nikar Dune are taking over. If there's 10 planets in the chaos, there's not really a specific list, but let's say there's 10 and we're the one. I don't like our odds against the other 9.
Right.
But they will not do a preemptive strike.
Right.
So Thrawn realizes...
Even if Thrawn can somehow, not concretely, but with enough reasonable doubt, prove that they're a threat,
right.
Even if he can get to that point, it doesn't matter
they don't
unless
care.
they're attacked first.
So he's got an idea. I don't want to spoil the book completely, but there's another character that needs to face... She's buying time for Thrawn, so she goes... they're trying to remove her from the situation.
Yeah.
And this
cool character, by the way.
Right. This will give up Thrawn's plan, and it'll throw everything away. And really, as the reader, you know both sides of the story, so you're thinking... This is bad for the Chiss. The guy's trying to save face, and you're like, you're going to kill your whole species if you don't help. So, anyways, she goes, I'm going to face the trials. Basically, trial by fire. I'm going to throw myself into the frying pan, and if I become trial-born, basically, her goal is to become trial-born. She wants to be part of the Myth family.
That way, she's not as easily removed.
Exactly. Yeah. She's not as easily removed. This guy has less hold over her directions. And also, the trials will take enough time for Thrawn to finish the plan that he's boiling up. And there's a very, very cool moment where she's on the top of this mountain and she's trying to complete this task. And there's this old Chiss. He's called the Patriarch. And basically, he's the ruling member of the Myth ruling family.
Yeah.
And she's kind of... He spooks her, actually. She's like, oh, I didn't know you were up here, and are you lost, or whatever? He's so old that she's like, are you lost? Are you okay?
Then she doesn't know who he is at first, and then it finally clicks, and he's like, oh, nice, yeah, Patriarch.
Yeah, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm the guy that's in charge.
Yeah, so, probably like the third most powerful member of the Chiss Ascendancy.
Right, exactly. The most
very
powerful...
Casual.
Yeah, the most powerful member of probably the most powerful family. And so, but it's very cool because she's like, are you... is Thrawn a risk? Is this? Is he that? Am I wrong for trusting him? And he says, as the Patriarch, right? Maybe the president of the Chiss Ascendancy as far as power.
Yeah.
And he says, my dear, I'm the one who told them to go get Thrawn.
Yeah.
I'm the one that sought him out and said, this is going to be good for the Myth. This is what will keep us kind of in the forefront of the 9 ruling families. This is what will be best for the Ascendancy.
Yeah. And so up until that point, the guy who was trying to get rid of Thrawn kind of had suspicions that Thrawn had a powerful benefactor, but he didn't know exactly
who it was. It's the benefactor.
Yeah, it's the guy.
You ever heard of Kraft Mac and Cheese? Yeah, this is Robert Kraft. This is the guy that owns the New England Patriots, and he picked Thrawn, so you're irrelevant, other guy.
Yeah.
But it's really cool because it's very rare, you almost never, in my mind, think about this, and help me if I'm forgetting someone, but even the Emperor isn't going to bat for Thrawn. It's basically whatever he helps him, but it's for the betterment of the Emperor.
Right.
This is the first character that has authority that is almost like taking him under his wing, almost like a grandson or a son.
Yeah,
and I want him to succeed. It'll be good for us, but he legitimately cares for Thrawn. I don't think we've ever seen that before.
Well, and you're never going to see it in the Empire. You know what I mean?
Right.
There are too many ulterior motives, too many looking out for number one. Tarkin kind of goes to bat for him a couple of times, but obviously it's motivated by something else. Everywhere
because
else,
he's
Thrawn's
at that
a tool.
8 politically.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Thrawn being on my side will help me get to where I need to be so I can take credit for this other thing.
Right.
And so it's really beautiful, kind of a, not emotional moment, but a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just kind of a family moment where you're like, wow,
Wholesome.
It's wholesome. It warms your heart.
Yeah.
I was out there and I was mowing the grass and I was like, dang. What a friend. Thrawn has a friend. It just made me feel good. And he said, the Patriarch said, if he's able to have people around him that'll help him navigate the political waters, he will be the greatest thing I've ever done for our family.
Yeah.
And that was just so cool.
Yeah, super
because
dope.
we see that. I know that. And you know that. We're aware of the situation, right? But as the reader, you can't be like... flip the pages and be like, no, listen to me. So he says if he has people like you around him who will help him face the political nonsense, he'll be the best thing that happened to our family and in turn, basically the ascendancy. And she says, can he be beaten? And this was one of the most baller lines. He said, unless something comes up that he's never seen before, unless it's like out of left field, he will never experience anything but momentary loss. He cannot be defeated. He might... a momentary, hey, there's a skirmish and we're taking heavy casualties. This happens earlier in the book,
right?
Where a ship is taking some serious damage and he completely uses it to his advantage.
Yeah.
And it's basically, unless something unforeseen happens,
or something that's totally out of his power. And I think this was definitely Tim Zahn trying to pull Thrawn out of the fire from what we saw at the end of Rebels.
Right. Yeah. Well, think about this. I mean, the most brilliant military mind.
Space whales. Come on now.
So, very cool moment. He does. Long story short, things do pan out well, and there's another character at the end of the book that is like, you find out that he's the big boss, and he kind of has kind of a Thanos moment where it's like, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
And so we don't really know much about this character, but that basically is the cliffhanger into book 2. My hopes for the future are that we somehow fast forward to Ezra and Thrawn, because I don't know what the freak happened to my boy.
Here's the thing, is that if they're enough into the chaos, it might fall into the jurisdiction of this trilogy. Mm-hmm. You know, we already saw this particular book is going to take place somewhere during the Clone Wars era, sometime before as well. But it has an overlap with some of the moments that you see in Thrawn alliances.
Right.
So it's kind of in different areas, and I assume that we're going to get more of those overlaps, you know, as it moves forward, as it gets closer to the, you know, canon Thrawn trilogy that's complete now.
Right. Yeah, I loved this book because the original Thrawn trilogy that we got was an open field. Tim could do what he wanted.
Yeah.
And then Alliances and Treason were both in such a small window of time. I mean, Treason was like a 2 or 3 day book.
Yeah.
Everything in that book happens in 2 or 3 days. And I could feel it. Not that he showed it, not that the content was bad, but it was like everything felt like we couldn't reach out of our...
Right. Well,
you know,
even
we're stuck in traffic and we can't really go anywhere. We're having a great time, but we're stuck.
2 weeks?
Right, exactly.
You get like 15 total days, you know, between the two of those books.
Right. So, where do you see the Ascendancy trilogy going? Obviously, Timothy Zahn is the kind of guy that has a plan and breaks it up into 3 books.
Yeah, I know.
In my opinion,
Thrawn is going to have to progress further militarily. I want to see how his and Arulani's relationship continues to develop, see where that ends up. Because there's obviously a depth of history when they meet in Thrawn Treason. But you get to see more of that and how they were definitely very influential in each other's development as, you know, young military.
They basically
persons.
just back and forth the whole book, go to bat for each other and completely trust in each other.
Cool.
And it's very cool because Arulani knows that Thrawn, just pure brain power, is greater than her. But Thrawn, more than once, admits because she just has...
He sees her as a better natural leader.
Yeah, he sees her, and he says something he says something interesting where he says, she has the ability to see those around her not as assets but as people.
Yeah.
And that gives her a better ability to lead. Only thing that... Or go ahead.
Something that's interesting is that at the very end of this book, Thrawn kind of has a momentary glimpse into the importance of political maneuvering, and he thinks that he's like, well, then I've got to learn it, I've got to study it, I've got to master it. And Arulani's knowing to herself that he never will. But somebody's talking to Thrawn, I think, about being a leader, and he was saying how Arulani, along those lines, was a better natural leader, and she can always get people to follow him.
Right.
And the person he's talking to says, well, then you just learn. You don't have to be like Arulani. Just do the same thing in your way and learn how to be a natural leader.
Right.
And it's cool because that's kind of the start of what you see in the more recent canon Thrawn trilogy. I'm just going to start calling it Thrawn trilogy because I'm tired.
Go ahead.
Yeah. In the Thrawn trilogy, where he will have the whole ship against him, but by the time that he's established, everybody on the ship is saying how he's the best captain or admiral or whatever rank he is at the time that they've ever had. And they always see his competence, and he's always willing to reward good behavior, even if it's a little unorthodox, to where he just naturally makes everybody feel used and utilized and, you know, empowered, or whatever word you want to use. But this is kind of the start of that, you know, ability that makes him such an indisposable leader for whatever ship he's on. So it'll be cool to see how that kind of develops further and further along in this trilogy.
Yeah, I want to see. It's interesting because I can see where in Thrawn's military career with the Empire, he doesn't have contact with the Chiss, I don't think. I would like to see some of this, whether it's in book 2 or 3, almost bleed into or even carry over his time in the Empire. And maybe that's, I mean, we could do...
There has to be some nominal contact, at least, because he sends Vanto out there.
Right,
You know
exactly.
what I mean?
So I'd like to see, maybe we get some more Eli Vanto, and that would be great. Staying in Thrawn. That's the redneck character from the Thrawn trilogy. But this one definitely felt to me more like these books, Heir to the Empire, the original Thrawn book, the Granddaddy, and Outbound Flight, which is his earliest appearance in Legends material. And it felt more like that, and so it felt like a return to stuff before Timothy was more boxed in.
Yeah, and like I said, I think this is an 8 out of 10 for me right now, but it won't surprise me if this novel ages very well for me.
Right, because
Like
if the other two books open up things that we didn't even realize we weren't seeing in book 1, that'll go up.
Right.
You know? Okay, so out of all the Thrawn books, we'll take Outbound Flight out of it because you haven't read it yet. But
make me look
the
bad.
the Heir to the Empire trilogy, the Thrawn trilogy, Chaos Rising. We won't include Rebels because it's not a book technically. Where does this experience with Thrawn rank for you?
I mean, it's Tim Zahn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we were discussing earlier, the reason that Thrawn has aged so well, especially in the more recent books, is because they let thank the maker. They let the maker have Thrawn. It wasn't somebody else trying to replicate the magic that was the Heir to the Empire series. I think it just fits right in. I think it's going to create something beautiful, and I just want to see where it goes.
Right.
I think it's a very good foundation for the rest of this trilogy. As a standalone novel, I still think maybe Thrawn is my favorite.
Yeah, it was really good.
But I think this is going to be a very good foundation.
I'll say this. My only, not complaint, but like, seems to be an inconsistency between this story and what we see later, is in this book specifically, there are moments where Thrawn sticks his neck out and breaks Chiss code, which is supposed to be his number one thing, protecting the Chiss, for other species in the chaos. Right? Now, contrast that to basically being, if here's the middle ground of your moral compass, and here's the caring side, and here's the ruthless side, he's like leaning more towards the caring side, not ruthless, right? In Star Wars Rebels Season 4, he's trying to beat the rebel, rising on Lothal. At the end of Season 3, he goes to the Bendu's planet, and he sees the Bendu, and he's like, what kind of Jedi devilry is this? And he just instantly starts shooting at the Bendu. Da, 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 da. More importantly, towards the end of Season 4 of Star Wars Rebels, he stations a dadgum fleet above the main city on Lothal and is like, hey, Ezra, you want me to blow up this whole freaking city? Are you going to come clean? Like, I don't know, maybe it's just the military has hardened him a little bit. Maybe he feels that random threat to the Chiss is getting closer, and so time is of the essence. But the ruthlessness of Thrawn grows exponentially from this time. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think
species he doesn't even know, has no relationship with, and that's his blunder, is he steps out of line to try to help one that he's being manipulated. But in Rebels, you remember when they're in that speeder factory and some of the rebels on Lothal, who aren't officially part of the rebellion with Luke and them, but they're pushing back against the Empire, they've made it where if the speeder reaches a certain speed, which it's a speeder, it's supposed to go fast, if it gets up to that, in your car, if you're going 60 or 65, that's like regular, but 70, 80, 90, you're starting to get faster. But if you really need to go somewhere, that's the speed you're going to be at. So basically, they've made it where when the speeders are chasing rebels and they get up to that higher range on their whatever, they malfunction and explode, right? And Thrawn goes into the speeder factory and goes, someone's been screwing up my speeders. We're going to figure out what's going on. And he makes this old guy, this poor old man. He's got like he looks like a little country guy. He's got a nice little white handlebar mustache. Looks like one of the brothers from, oh my God, Tombstone. He looks like, what's
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott. I want to say Jim Elliott. He looks like Sam Elliott from Tombstone. And he's like, do you trust your work? And the guy's like, yeah. And he's like, good. And he makes him get on this speeder, and it starts heating up, and he's like, something's wrong. And he's like, it appears so. And he wants to get off, or Ezra wants to help him or whatever, and Thrawn pulls his gun and is like, you're going to finish this. And he makes the guy hold on to the speeder until it explodes and kills the guy. So that's the inconsistency, is in my personal preference. I like the Thrawn that makes guys get up on speeders and kill themselves for the sake of his cause.
There's a couple things. One, speeder murder Thrawn is a different writer. You know what I mean? And he's got to look like he's the villain.
Yeah, that's the main thing, I think.
He's got to look like he's the villain.
Because Dave Filoni was talking with Timothy Zahn constantly when they were writing him. And Timothy Zahn thinks that he said that the portrayal in Rebels is good.
Here, protagonist, Rebels antagonist. You know what I mean? You can't have a good-looking villain as far as appeal. Let me finish. The other thing is that Thrawn is still really young here. You know what I mean?
That's what I was thinking as well.
And I think he gets enough tastes of good guys finish last that he's like, you know what, screw it. I think there's so much backlash when he tries to do what he thinks is the right thing instead of just completing an objective. And also, I mean, at that point, he's learned how to create gestures. He's learned how to
send a signal.
He's learned how to
send
work with people more. You know what I mean? You know, he knows what makes things clear to other people.
Right.
So I think it's just a development. You know, you always have somebody new on the job. They're going to be bright-eyed and optimistic.
Right.
And then by Rebels, we have like ultimate pessimist Thrawn, who's even threatening his own people, which is very out of character for him. You know what I mean? But I think there's just so much going wrong that's been out of his control that he's like, all right, we got to get this, back under control real fast.
I think the thing is, he realizes the urgency of the timing, and maybe in this book, whenever he's like sticking his neck out for other people, he sees them as a possible, he wants to win over the favor of someone who would be an ally to the Chiss. And in Rebels, he maybe feels more pressure to perform, because he didn't choose the Empire because he believed in the Empire's doings. He chose the Empire because the Empire was organized, and at that time, if something arose that threatened the Chiss Ascendancy, the Empire was far more reliable and stronger to help the Chiss than the rebellion was.
And maybe he was just so happy to be able to make a preemptive strike that he was just seizing every opportunity. He's like canned heat all the time. He's working for the Ascendancy, and finally he's working with the Empire.
He just goes down the street just shooting people.
He's like, threat!
Preemptive
strikes.
You were going to strike me.
Yeah.
Couple of things. Timothy Zahn was asked a couple of years ago in a, First Order versus the Empire space battle, Grand Admiral Thrawn versus Kylo Ren. Not hand-to-hand, obviously, but strategy. Who wins in a fight? And Timothy Zahn said, have you seen the way that Kylo Ren reacts emotionally to everything? Thrawn would have him for breakfast. Do you agree?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thrawn is... Wow, I just was loading in that sentence. Thrawn is so much more collected and less reactive. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the things that's most surprising about the Bendu is you never really see Thrawn just kind of out of hand react to something. It's usually very measured. I think with somebody like Kylo Ren, he's predictably manipulative enough. He's very predictably able to be manipulated. I don't think that Kylo would stand a chance. I can't see Kylo being able to step out of his own head enough to be able to fight somebody as measured as Thrawn.
Right. Second thing that Timothy Zahn has said is if Thrawn and not Vader was in charge of the fleet over Endor, the rebellion would have never been victorious, and the Empire would have reigned for basically forever.
Yeah, I think the problem there for Vader is that Vader didn't care about the rebellion. He was all eyes on Luke at that point, you know what I mean? And the Emperor was kind of there too. That even when he was, and they'll fight this fully operational battle, you know, he was that whole gesture was for Luke.
Yeah,
he didn't care about the Empire or the rebellion at all. That was all about manipulating Luke, which kind of shows where their heads were at as far as how important Luke was. But at the same time, you even have in Thrawn alliances where Thrawn, and granted this is Tim Zahn's writing, but you have Thrawn interacting with Vader, and Vader essentially says to Thrawn, are you going to tell me that somebody with as much military prowess as you hasn't already thought of one way to kill me? And Thrawn's like, 3 actually. You know what I mean? Like, it's just somebody
that's just balling.
Even Thrawn and Vader were both confident with Thrawn's ability to overcome Vader if push came to shove.
Right. Man, obviously I think Vader would just paint the walls with Thrawn's blood if they ever came to a fight. But I'm sure I would have liked to see more.
It's the old Batman versus Superman thing.
Here's the thing. What I don't like is that Ezra got the better of Thrawn. It's crap. And so my hope is that if we ever do get Thrawn and Ezra back, whether it's a cartoon or live action, I hope the first 45 seconds is just Thrawn beating the living crap out of Ezra and being like, don't you understand what I'm doing?
Yeah.
I'm trying to help. Something. I don't know. Thrawn is a greater good kind of guy. And just like Pharaoh says, sacrifices must be made. And so,
anyway,
that's kind of a half spoilery, half spoiler-free review.
There are little details we gave away, but there are some details I specifically reserved that I didn't say. And I think the overall storyline is intact if you haven't read the book and you still want to.
Very good book. Also, if you want to get if you don't have an Audible account, your first credit is free, and you can try it you can use it to try out Thrawn Ascendancy and see what you think about it. That kind of wraps it up for us. One more announcement from the Hasbro thingy is that they are making a Razor Crest for the vintage collection.
Just as you suspected.
Just as I suspected. And so very exciting. We still didn't get Thrawn in the vintage collection, so I guess I'll just wait some more. Dadgummit. But very exciting stuff. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see new stuff developing. There's been rumors earlier this week of a specific actor alluding to his playing Ezra Bridger in an upcoming show, which means a live-action Ezra Bridger, which I could care less. He could die in a house fire. It means live-action Grand Admiral Thrawn. And so we'll see. We'll keep it on our radars. But that's all we have for today. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share with your family and friends. Remember, the Force will be with you.
And the only family you have here is me.
Wow. All right, we'll see you next week.